You're listening to the Dibbly Dobbly Podcast. Remember to like, share, comment, subscribe, and click the bell to make sure you get the latest episodes of the podcast. Be sure to like and share our Facebook page and follow us on Twitter.
Sure.
So our first discussion point today is the World Test Championship final. Talking about that was a great game. So we're going to talk about that. We're also going to talk about the improvements for the next cycle in 2021-23 and beyond. And obviously, Nick and Gabe did it R3 wickets on the WTC. But before we get to that, your thoughts on the final in general?
I think that, and Gabe had alluded to this earlier, I think there's two different things to talk about. Talk about the game itself and then talk about all the organization beforehand. I think that it's really cool that we have a WTC. And I think it's awesome that it started relatively new in our cricket watching career. The game itself, I did not think there was going to be a result. And the fact that there was a result was fantastic. The fact that you have new guys like Devin Conway, you have guys who will still be there for a while like Kane Williamson. You have, I'm going to forget his name, the guy that got a half century, is probably his last test match is going to hit. Who's the legend for New Zealand that was batting there with King Williamson?
Ross Taylor.
Thank you, Ross. The fact that he's probably going to go out, or he's going to go out as a champion, but that's probably going to be his last match.
He's not retiring, Nick.
He's not?
He's
I heard that was his last one.
I read it somewhere that he's still going on.
Oh, wow.
He wants
that's
to go
incredible.
on for a bit.
For tests? He's going to continue with tests?
Yeah. Or any format. But if he gives up one, probably prolong his career. But he's a legend of New Zealand cricket, Ross Taylor.
Right.
And he will go down as one of the legends. Yeah.
But the fact, and you get the young kid, Kyle Jamieson, who I did not think was going to be on the side in the test WTC. The fact that they were able to do what they did. And as a fan of India, I wish I could make an excuse for this or that, or it's not fair, or it's this or that. There were no excuses. New Zealand were the better team. They didn't dominate, but at the end, it looked like they dominated by the way they outlasted and they were able to chase and all that kind of stuff. So it was an incredible match, and it was incredible that New Zealand, with all the odds stacked against them, with the situation, the rain, they were able to get that result. But the organization of it, like Gabe said earlier, was somewhat laughable because you have a 2-year buildup where you have all these matches, you have all these series planned, you have everything planned. You know you're going to get to a final, COVID or not, hook or by crook, we're going to get to this final. And I know people say you can't change things last minute. I don't care about that. If you're alluding to 2 years and you're going to that climax, it's like watching a movie. You don't want the climax to be like, really? That was it? A 1-second fight where the guy punches him one time and it's over? You want to have that climax, and you don't want anything to get in the way of it. So the match was fantastic. It was good cricket, but they've got to do better as far as setting up for that ultimate showdown.
Absolutely. Gabe, your thoughts on the final in general?
In general, I think that the two best teams were there. I personally trash talked New Zealand, and this is before I knew what a New Zealand was, because I had literally just saw New Zealand, and most of their wins were at home. They struggled in the South, in subcontinent, and I was like, other than Kane Williamson, I really didn't. I mean, I saw Devin Conway's debut, right? So no one knew who Devin Conway was. Obviously, South Africa didn't know who Devin Conway was. Just saying, all right? But it's one of those things where I'm looking at the names in India and looking at the new names in New Zealand, and I'm thinking to myself, no way. And the first, even Kane Williamson, and that's what tells you the difference between test and limited format. Watching Kane Williamson play in the IPL, he was average. He was pedestrian. Honestly, he was. He just, go back and look at that season. So I was like, this team, really? And then they played Australia and they played the West Indies, and holy cow, I knew India was in trouble because this team is stacked. First and foremost, their fundamentals, no other team feels like they do. Whether it's England, Australia, West Indies, India, I don't care. They are fundamentally sound, where they do not give up. They don't turn a single into a double, or, you know what I'm saying? You don't see too many leg buys by them. You just don't see too many drop catches. I said, it's like they got 1,000 fielders out there. It's so frustrating, but they're really fundamental at their fielding. And I was super impressed with Devin Conway and Kane Williamson. And the difference is the skill that it takes to play test, where you can maintain throughout. Where, okay, I'm not going to come out and score a half century in 5 overs. You know what I'm saying? Or 10 overs. But I'm going to wear you out. And I'm going to be here eating up deliveries until you get tired and that ball loses its shine, and then I'm going to do damage. And not all guys have that kind of patience to, take on those pacers or even those wibbly wobblies, right? Where they don't have a lot of patience, but I'm not going to get myself out. And their patience, I had to eat my words. I was wrong. Not to take away from India. Their team is phenomenal, but New Zealand's test squad, and especially in those conditions, I think is the best in the world. I mean, gosh, Kane Williamson, could I have been more wrong? I'm like, this guy, was trash in the IPL. He was pedestrian. And I think the first time I saw him play live, he scored like 200 on my West Indies or something like that. I was like, are you kidding me?
I don't think he was ever trash in the IPL. The IPL T20, it's a different animal because he always bats 3, 4, 5, usually 4 or 5. So you're not always going to get in the match. And if you do, it's going to be, maybe 12, 15 balls where you're not going to be able to do too much. But I think when we saw him being there earlier than expected because the other guys got out, he held his own pretty well. But to Gabe's point, we didn't see any New Zealand the first several months of our live streaming career. They just weren't playing. It wasn't their season yet. So
yeah, that's right. And obviously my thoughts on the final, it was probably one of the best test matches I've seen in a long time. I've seen quite a few over my journey. Some brilliant test matches I can name off the top of my head. But this one, regardless of the weather, putting that to one side, luckily we got a result, thank goodness. And New Zealand deserved to win, thoroughly deserved to win. They played the better cricket than India. India sort of lost it on that last day. We'll get into that a bit later. But what I thought was it's good old-fashioned test match cricket. Grind it out, fight it, wear the bowlers down as a batsman, the bowlers be patient, and wickets will come in those conditions. And a low-scoring game is often the best game. I like the low-scoring test matches because it's so close. It's on a knife edge. You don't know who's going to win. I hate it when test matches, get a flat pitch. You play 500 plays 400 or something like that. It's boring. You know who's going to win. It's probably going to be a draw. One team's going to win. The other team has no chance. Whereas in this test match, all 3 possible results, to be realistic, 2 were only possible, New Zealand winning and a draw. India's chances were slim heading into that last day. But still possible for them to win. You never say never in test matches. And if weird things have happened, batting collapse, New Zealand batting last, batting collapse, they could have lost. They lost 2 wickets, but Williamson and Taylor stood their ground and guided them home, chasing down 139 to win in the end. It only takes one good innings from one good batsman or one good partnership to chase down a low total in a run chase in Test cricket. And the pitch was starting to be pretty good for batting because the sun was coming out. Finally, rarity in England, the sun coming out, baking the pitch. In India's team selection, picking 2 spinners in those conditions, question mark. It was sort of a team that was set up for Indian conditions. You play 2 spinners in India, that's a given. Not in England. The pitches don't turn as much in England. A little bit of turn, yes, but not much. So probably they could have used Mohammad Siraj in there. And that's what I talked about in my final review on my channel. Is in hindsight's a wonderful thing. But they could have gone with Siraj as that extra option because the bowlers, let's be honest, they were short of a gallop, really. Lack of preparation. You're playing intra-squad games among yourselves. That's not really preparing you for a test match because you can't really replicate the pressure of a test match in the nets. You just can't. Only until you play the game. That's the real pressure on there. because their bowlers are bowling to their batsmen. So their batsmen are used to their bowlers. They're not facing different bowlers like in a tour game, like a first class game. You need to face variation, different bowlers. Whereas you're facing the same bowlers like you have done in the nets time and time again. Whatever you do doesn't mean anything. There's no consequences. You get out in that game, doesn't matter. You get out in a test match, it does matter. You score runs. Rishabh Pant scored a century in that intra-squad game. That doesn't mean anything. That doesn't mean anything. It means something if you score a century in the test match. So what I'm trying to say is lack of preparation, because the IPL was on and that got postponed due to obvious reasons, as you all know. And it's going to be resuming later on this year in September in the UAE. So their last test match, India, was in March against England when they won that series. So then you play IPL, most of the bowlers are bowling 4 overs. That's not much. In test matches, you've got to back up spell after spell. It takes a lot out of you, and they were short of a gallop. You could see that lack of preparation. That's why you saw in the New Zealand innings, the tailenders were able to score runs against them, because you could see the signs of fatigue was starting to show on the Indian bowlers, because they just didn't have the overs in the legs. And it's like, you got to play a competitive match. It's like Trent Boult. He didn't play the first match against England, but he said to the New Zealand management, he said, let me play the second test, because I'm not going to go into the World Test Championship final, the biggest game of our lives, underdone, because I'm not going to be useful to the team. You might as well not pick me then, because I don't deserve my spot. So obviously that's because of the scheduling, because, the scheduling's been a mess in international cricket for some time. These days, you don't have tour games before you begin series. You used to have that back in the old days in cricket. Not anymore, because there's so much cricket going on now compared back into the 90s, for example, where you didn't play a lot of cricket now with T20 cricket and all that. So that's why the preparation for India was poor. But, that's not an excuse. I'm not saying that's it, India won't say that's an excuse. We just didn't play well. But it does have a bit of an impact. And you did see that, especially in the second innings, where the game was gone. They knew it was gone. And the body language was gone. The shoulders slumped back. Ashwin got those 2 wickets. They were on a high. But then they were like, we're not going to win this game. So really for me, it's very important to play a proper match before a test match. But you just don't see it these days. And that was the thing going into this WTC final for India. That was their biggest disadvantage. New Zealand were clearly advantaged by playing 2 test matches against England, and it showed in their performance. And
such an interesting take. I haven't really heard too many people mention that. And, I should have probably picked up on that sooner, because we actually have the same thing in American sports here, where, let's say NBA finals, for instance, right? Usually one team ends up sweeping another team and getting to the finals. So now they're rested for whatever. They come in that first game cold. You know what I mean? They come in not having played, and they can drop a game. Same thing happens in baseball. The Yankees, used to happen to my Yankees all the time. They would sweep their series in the ALCS, and then they would make it to the World Series. And now we got to sit for 10 days or 8 days, whatever it may be. So that was a disadvantage, and I didn't even think about that. And I think that you're right. That's poor preparation, not on the players, but on the management, by not, scheduling another match, knowing, hey, we're going to be going into this test match. We don't want to send our guys out there. Another thing, and talking about the format, kind of wrap up this conversation, test is a series of games, right? Not just a one-off test match. So how do you feel about, and you're talking about any future changes? I would like to see at the very minimum a 3-set test match, because, you can easily drop that first test match and come and win the second 2. India is notorious for dropping that first test match and then coming back and winning the other 2. And I think that what I do love about tests so much is it's a war of attrition. It's not about just one day or one game. It's about lasting the long haul. That's what I love about baseball. Baseball's 162 games, regular season, and then you get into the playoffs, all right? And if you're going to go to the World Series, you're playing another 20 plus games. So 180 games, all right? It's a war of attrition. And to make it from a test series to just a one-off test match, I think it takes a little bit away from the game. But that's just my opinion. I want to know your thoughts on that.
My thoughts on that? Yeah. My thoughts is I agree what you say, Gabe, and Nick in that R3 wickets when you said ICC, you need to do 3 test matches. Most people agree with that. I agree with that. But here's my take on it. And I've got an article in front of me. And the ICC have said, in a perfect world, these words, the ICC's words, in a perfect world, a 3 test series would be great, a great way to decide the WTC. But the reality of the international cricket schedule is we are not going to have, but the reality of the international cricket schedule is we are just not going to have a situation where blocking out a month or so for all teams in the tournament for the final is realistic. That's what the ICC have said. They would like to have it, but they said we can't block out a month in the schedule because the schedule is so broken in international cricket. They would like a 3-game final. They've said they will like it, but they don't want it. They're not doing it. So they've said that's why we're sticking with 1.
See,
it just
shows
so
frustrating to me because it's why are we having the WTC? What is the purpose? Is it so that cricket fans and cricketing world and these different boards can know who's the best test team every 4 years? I don't know what the format is. Every 3 or 4 years.
Every 2 years.
Every 2 years. There you go.
WTC. Yeah.
What is the purpose? Or is it something that you can sell tickets to? Because I understand the IPL was supposed to go till end of May, early June, and it got delayed. Okay, so they didn't schedule a test series for India before the WTC. But I know New Zealand they ended their series, I think, 4 days before the WTC started with England. They got 2 test matches. What was the purpose of scheduling that? Because I don't believe that's part of the WTC going forward.
It wasn't.
Right?
Because
and it wasn't part of the previous WTC. Maybe it was some traditional New Zealand always plays England at this time of year for
the reason for that, Nick, is because the ECB did it for their summer. It was a late addition to the English summer. You often see it in, a late addition. We just play a couple of test matches. Because really what England are thinking about is about long term. The more test matches they play, because they've got the Ashes later on this year, as we all know. So that's what, more test matches. Yeah, sure, it wasn't a part of the WTC. Some series are not a part of the WTC.
Right.
Okay.
No, I get that. They have, I think, 6 series each for each team that's
I've got it in front of me here.
But real quick, let me just finish my thought real quick there.
Sorry, yep.
My point is this. What is the point of having it? Is it just to sell tickets for a 1 test match, 5 or 6 days of fun? Yay, we have a champion. Or do you really want to know who's the best? Or should the WTC just be all 1 test match in each series? I mean, that's not usually how it goes. So if you want to have that WTC and you're saying you can't schedule it, then make it a 3-year affair so you can schedule a 1-month block where you have those 2 teams playing against each other. For me, that'd be my rebuttal to it. I think that just sounds like a kind of a lazy excuse, but at least they addressed it somewhat.
Yes, it is. Just addressing why we have it is to add context and relevance to Test cricket. You played a bilateral series before this WTC came about, didn't mean anything. Only a handful of ICC ranking points, and that's it. And a trophy. Because some series that you play don't mean anything. I'm not trying to be disrespectful, but something like the Ashes, for example, you're fighting for something. You're playing towards something. The ICC wanted to create that when they started this WTC, is to add context and relevance to Test cricket, to make every game count, home and away, to decide who's the best team in the world. The ICC wanted a World Cup for Test cricket, and they've got that. You're going to have some teething problems. People are not going to like what's happened in this first edition. But personally, my thoughts on it is that I like it because it adds relevance. You need something for the players to fight for, not just rocking up and playing a series and that's it. You go home and then you play the next series. It's about adding that context and relevance. And going back to what the ICC said, we would like to play 3 finals. They said they would like to do that, but they're not going to because the international schedule is just so compacted. They know the schedule is compacted because they come up with the schedule in the Future Tours program, which they program every 2 years, and they assign series to all the teams for the 2-year block. That's how it works. And you can see it on their website. If you go on the ICC's website, you can see the Future Tours program up there. They know the fixture of the international calendar, I should say, is compacted. There's so much cricket on. It's been broken for a very long time. They know the problem. They don't want to address it because they feel like, I read somewhere, it's like the WTC is like a plaster covering over the scheduling to make it better.
Yeah, right.
That's what I saw and read. So for me, it's great because it's adding that relevance to Test cricket, which you need. This year was interrupted, obviously, due to obvious reasons. But it would be ideal to play three Test matches. You can put a month out to do that.
Absolutely.
Of course you can. After a 2-year period, who's going to be playing cricket, in that month, if you put it aside, for example? They still don't know where the final is going to be held in 2 years' time. They haven't decided that. Probably it's going to be at Lord's for 2 years. For the next 2 years, it's probably going to be at Lord's or somewhere else. I've heard people say, share it around, or whoever wins, let them host the final. But then you're going to have a situation where what happens if New Zealand wins, but it's in New Zealand? Then you have to move it somewhere else because you've got to have it at a neutral venue, you see.
Right.
So it's a good idea, but it's like a school report card. I'm sure Nick and Gabe, you as teachers, probably you've written this comment many times. You can do better. You could do better. The ICC could do better.
Right.
Because their form at the moment, it's like a grade F. They're the governing body of cricket. They should take on feedback from everyone and from the fans, but they don't want to listen to it. And obviously the next cycle is going to be England and India next month to kick things off for the next cycle.
Right.
But the thing is that they've only got 9 teams in this next cycle. They haven't got Afghanistan, Ireland, and Zimbabwe. And what really ticks me off, sorry if I'm going to rant here, but, doing one of your rants, Gabe, at the ICC, you should not call it a World Test Championship if you do not include the 12 full member nations of the ICC. You might as well call it a Test Championship. To me, it's not a World Test Championship. Everyone has a right. Afghanistan, Ireland, Zimbabwe, especially Afghanistan and Ireland, they've worked hard to get Test status.
Right.
You know how hard that is to get? And I've seen a documentary about Afghanistan cricket from where they came from until now. Well, in the early days.
Right.
And they've worked hard. They love their cricket. They're enthusiastic. Rashid Khan, I've seen Rashid Khan for the Adelaide Strikers in the Big Bash because I go and watch Big Bash games at the Adelaide Oval and I see him bowl live. He's a brilliant guy. He's sort of the flag bearer for Afghanistan cricket. But if you're going to deny him and these other countries Test cricket because they don't play enough Test cricket, that's the bottom line, because they don't have that in the schedule. Because for example, Nick and Gabe, that's the bottom line, is that they don't play enough cricket. And it's just absolutely unacceptable, in my opinion. They should play more cricket.
Sounds like we're like-minded there, because the ICC drives me crazy too. Their decisions drive me crazy. It's the WTC drives me crazy. And I think in general, kind of to wrap up this part of the conversation, in all sports, the biggest issue is you don't have true fans running these leagues. You have corporate guys in suits and ties that probably never played the game, or don't have a real vested interest in the game other than, to Nick's point, how many tickets are we selling? How many TV spots are we selling? How many sponsors are we getting? That's all they care about. And you see that here. I mean, for me, sports died, and I mean died, when they went to a TV timeout during the Super Bowl. This is the biggest game in American sports, the most viewed game, and stoppage of play. And don't tell me there's nothing about momentum. All right, I've been to many a games. The other team's on their heels, they're tired, they're huffing and puffing. Timeout. What do you mean TV timeout? Are you kidding me? We got to get a commercial in. What? That just, you know what I mean? And that's the problem. You don't have people that are truly passionate about whatever game it is, actually running these governing bodies.
That's right. What improvements should the ICC make to the World Test Championship? Let us know in the comments down below. Be sure to subscribe to Cricket for Americans, Boring Reviews, and The Final Reaction. Be sure to subscribe and click the bell to get the latest episodes of the podcast, and like and share our Facebook page, and follow us on Twitter. Until next time, keep safe, and bye for now.